A fist shot through the air and hit the chest of a tomb guard. The crowd at Arlington halted, their breath trapped in their throats. The man who threw the punch was a kung fu champion with a gold medal hanging around his neck. He smiled, thinking it would be an easy win and a viral moment for his supporters. He thought the guard was just a statue in a fancy suit that was taught to march but not fight. But what he didn't know, and what no one else in that shocked, muttering crowd could have predicted, was that the tomb guard standing silently in front of him had fought enemies in combat zones that most people only see in movies, and in one quick, devastating move, the guard was ready to give a lesson that would be heard far beyond the tomb's marble steps. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notifications button. Also tell us in the comments section, where are you watching this story from? If you think that ideals like honor, courage, and sacrifice still matter, help us preserve their memory alive. The sun was low in the sky above Arlington National Cemetery, and the rows of white headstones that lined the path seemed like quiet soldiers standing at attention. The air smelled like a Virginia autumn, and the soft rustle of leaves mixed with the steady click of polished boots on marble. 21 steps, a break, and a turn that is exactly right. Another break, this time for 21 seconds of silence. Then 21 more steps. With his M14 rifle resting on his shoulder, and the bayonet glinting in the dimming light, Tomb Sentinel Sergeant Marcus Hale moved with mechanical precision. His uniform was perfect, with every crease sharp enough to cut glass. His face was a mask of discipline that couldn't be read. This was the tomb of the unknown soldier, a revered monument to the soldiers who died in battle that has been watched over by guards since 1937. For the tourists who had congregated beyond the velvet ropes, it was a serious event. To Marcus, it was a task that was harder than the rifle he carried. Liwei Alex Chen walked through the crowd with his championship kung fu belt hung over one shoulder, catching the sun like a badge of achievement. Alex was 32 years old and grew up in Chinatown, San Francisco, where his Chinese immigrant parents lived. Now a martial arts icon with 5 national titles and 2 gold medals from the Olympics. His black tracksuit, which had the dragon logo of Chen's Dragon Gate Academy on it, fit his athletic body perfectly. Behind him, his 4-man entourage, all wearing the same gear, looked quite confident. Mike the cameraman lifted a sleek camera to be ready to film informative videos for Alex's 1.2 million YouTube fans. Jake, Tony, and Chris were all black belts and outstanding students. Their presence made Alex seem even more invincible. As he got closer, tourists moved out of the way without thinking. Some recognized him from viral combat videos, while others were just captivated to his swagger. Alex halted a few steps from the velvet line, put his hands on his hips, and looked at Marcus with the critical eye of a fighter weighing up an opponent. Families, veterans, and school students on a field trip watched with interest, anticipating that something was about to happen. Alex's voice broke the silence. It was loud, confident, and totally California cool. "Okay, everyone, come here. You're about to learn some real martial arts," he said, pointing at Marcus, who kept walking with his eyes fixated on the ground. "Look at this guy standing still with a rifle weighing him down. He can't move. This is ceremonial stuff, not combat readiness. In my dojo, we teach movement, power, flow, and real fighting skills." He smirked and shook his head. "This is just for show." The crowd moved. A woman from Ohio brought her kids closer and whispered about respect. A Vietnam vet, cap-wearing older man grimaced and crossed his arms, while a few teens nodded and pulled out their phones to shoot. Alex's friends smiled and cheered him on. "Show him, Alex," Jake yelled, and his voice cut through the noise. "Show me your kung fu stance." Alex dropped into a perfect horse stance, with his knees bent and arms coiled like springs. His body radiated controlled force. "This is how a fighter stands," he stated so that people in the back of the audience could hear. It was balanced, ready to attack or defend from any direction, and not stuck in place like a museum piece. Marcus kept going, his steps perfectly in time with each other. Click, click, click. His face didn't move. His eyes stayed the same, but the air around him seemed like it was getting tighter, like a spring under pressure. Alex moved around the rope in a smooth, almost dramatic way. He kicked high and stopped just short of the air. The action was so exact that the crowd gasped. "See that? That's kung fu based on hundreds of years of Chinese tradition, and perfected in the ring. I've beaten world champions in less than a minute. This guy," he pointed at Marcus again, "is trained to march, not fight. Big difference." A woman's voice, firm but warm like a schoolteacher who had seen it all, broke through the tension. "Young man, I'd suggest you rethink your approach. The Tomb Guards aren't what you think they are." Colonel Rebecca Ford moved forward, her silver hair tucked under a volunteer GU's cap, her posture shouting military even in civilian attire. She was 65, a veteran Marine, and one of the first women to work as a tomb sentinel decades ago. She looked at Alex with the calm authority of someone who has seen worse than a cocky martial artist. "They're soldiers on active duty," she answered in a calm voice. "They've been in battle and trained for it. That stillness you're making fun of is discipline, not weakness." Alex smiled and didn't let it get to him. His confidence was still strong. "With all due respect, ma'am, I've fought in full contact matches on 3 continents. I run 5 dojos, train NFL stars, and have even worked with some actors you might know." He tapped the gold medal he won in Shanghai last month. "I know combat. This," he pointed to Marcus, who had stopped marching at the finish. "This is parade stuff. No offense, but it's not the same level as what I do." The gathering was becoming bigger because they were interested in the show. "This guy's going to regret this," a dad in a Patriots jersey whispered to his son. A group of college kids laughed, and one said, "Dude's got guts, I'll give him that." Mike swooped in with a camera and recorded everything. He said to Jake, "Content gold." Alex spoke louder, like a ringside announcer, to get the crowd's attention. "Okay, let's break it down. In Kung Fu, your stance is your base. Your weight is evenly distributed. Your knees are bent, and your hands are ready." He showed a succession of forms, including the cat stance, crane and kick, with each action flowing into the next. A show of athletic skill that has been cultivated for 20 years. "Now look at our friend here," he said, waving Marcus away. "Feet together, hands tied up with that rifle, center of gravity all wrong. In a real fight, he'd be done in seconds." Colonel Ford's eyebrows narrowed, but she kept her voice steady. "Son, you're standing on sacred ground. The tomb honors soldiers who gave everything, men and women who didn't come home. These guards aren't just standing there. They're trained to protect this place and everything it stands for." Alex shrugged and didn't care. "I understand the meaning, ma'am. Respect to the dead. But from a combat point of view, this stance is a liability." He turned to the audience and raised his voice. "Stillness means defeat in my world. Movement means survival. Let me show you." He went closer to the rope, ignoring a security officer who had come at the edge of the crowd and was talking on the radio. Alex started another set, a flurry of punches and kicks that all stopped just shy of hitting imaginary targets. The crowd was suddenly enthralled. Some cheered while others shifted uncomfortably. A boy wearing a Spider-Man shirt pulled on his mom's sleeve. "Is he going to fight the guard?" The mom told him to be quiet, but her eyes kept on the situation. Colonel Ford moved closer, and her voice got sharper. "Mr. Chen, you're going too far. The Tomb Guard is a soldier, not a punching bag for your demonstration." Alex put his hands up in a fake surrender, but he didn't stop smiling. "Don't worry, ma'am. I'm just teaching people. No one is getting hurt." He looked at Mike. "Keep rolling. This is going viral." Then he said to the gathering, "Let's talk about structural integrity. A good stance holds up under pressure. A bad one." He looked at Marcus, who had just finished another round with his gun steady. "It falls apart." The security guard, who was short and had a crew cut, stepped forward. "Sir, you need to step back. Stay away from the sentinel," Alex said, waving him off and getting angrier. "I'm almost done here. Just showing the folks what real combat readiness looks like." He fell into a fighting stance, eyes set on Marcus's chest, calculating angles like he was back in the ring. "In Kung Fu, we protect our weak points: chest, solar plexus, knees." He showed how to block with his arms snapping into place. "This guy is wide open. He has no guard and can't move. It's like he's begging to get hit." A murmur spread through the gathering. The Vietnam veteran shook his head and said, "This kid's digging his own grave." A teenage girl muttered to her buddy, "He's kind of full of himself, huh?" But Alex was loving the attention. He started to slowly and carefully stretch, rotating his shoulders and relaxing his wrists, like a warrior getting ready for a fight. "Let's take this up a notch," he yelled, as his voice echoed over the empty square. "Now that I've shown you the theory, let's see how it works in practice. In competition, we call this pressure testing, which means pushing a stance to its breaking point." Colonel Ford's voice was sharp and commanding. "Don't do it, son. You're making a mistake." For a split second, Alex hesitated, and doubt showed in his eyes. Then his ego as a champion came back. "It's under control, ma'am. I know what I'm doing." He looked at Marcus, who was standing still with his gaze straight ahead, looking quite disciplined. "Not to be rude, man," Alex stated loudly enough for everyone to hear, But this is why sports martial arts beats ceremonial training every time. He got into his stance, with his weight well distributed, and his hands ready to attack like a cobra. Watch closely, ladies and gentlemen. This is the difference between show and substance. The crowd held its breath as the air grew heavy. Mike even dropped his camera a little, knowing that the boundary had been crossed. Alex moved so quickly that his body was a blur of seasoned accuracy. His hand rushed forward in a straight blow targeted toward Marcus's sternum. It was a controlled attack, much like the ones he had used to win tournaments, and it was done perfectly. The collision was loud and sharp, like a thump that rang throughout the plaza. Marcus's suit took the hit, and his body swayed a little, but he didn't flinch. The only trace that the blow had connected was a little trickle of blood at the corner of his mouth. Alex stepped back, happy, and turned to the throng. See that? No reaction, no counter. That's what I'm talking about. Ceremony, not combat. His smile stopped when Marcus's eyes moved and locked onto his with the focus of a predator. It happened right away, and was scary. Marcus went from being a statue to being a weapon in the blink of an eye. His weapon hit the marble with a loud bang, and before Alex could blink, Marcus's right hand sprang forward in a single precise CQC move, fingers slightly curved, and impacted the solar plexus with surgical accuracy. The hit wasn't spectacular. It was just brutally effective. It was meant to stop, not to perform. Alex's breath left him in a sudden whoosh. His diaphragm tightened, and his knees gave way. He staggered, his eyes wide with amazement, and held his chest as he gasped for air that wouldn't come. People dropped their phones and gasped as they watched in shock. Marcus moved forward, his motions smooth yet controlled, and did a flawless leg sweep. Alex fell hard, and his championship belt slid over the marble with a metallic clink. "Stay down," Marcus murmured in a calm, low voice. It was the first thing he had said. "Slow down your breathing." Alex wheezed, his face pale and his body bent down. The crowd was quiet, and the only noise was his ragged breathing. Mike's camera was left behind on the ground, and the other people in the group moved back, their former swagger gone. Jake took a step closer, but then he stopped when Marcus's icy, unrelenting glare turned to him. Jake lifted his hands and stepped back. "Not a problem, man," he said. Colonel Ford went to Marcus's side, and her voice broke the silence. "That's enough, everyone. The show is over." She spoke to the crowd in a stern but not rude way. That wasn't a show. It was a reminder. These sentinels aren't actors. They're soldiers, elite combat trained to honor our fallen. She pointed to Marcus, who had gotten his rifle back and was standing at parade rest, his face blank even though there was blood on his mouth. This man went to Afghanistan twice and trained with elite reconnaissance forces. That hit isn't in any dojo. It is meant to stop threats, not score points. Alex, still on the ground, managed a small cough, and his breathing steadily got better. He looked up at Marcus and said, "How?" Marcus didn't answer, but Colonel Ford did, and her voice got a little softer. "Different training, Mr. Chen. You fight for trophies, he fights to stay alive. The Tomb Guards discipline those 21 steps. That stillness isn't weakness, it's control. The kind you need when lives are on the line." Security officials arrived, their radios crackling as they looked about. The main officer, who had a buzz cut and was very serious, nodded to Marcus. "Situation contained." "Sergeant, affirmative," Marcus said, his voice level, and he went back to parade rest. The officer turned to Alex, who was now sitting up and still holding his chest. "Sir, you're under arrest for attacking a soldier on duty. That's a federal crime, especially here." Alex nodded, wincing as the cops helped him stand up. He was no longer arrogant. Instead, he felt a mix of anguish and growing respect. He looked at Marcus and whispered softly, "I didn't know. I thought you were just ceremonial." Colonel Ford's eyes softened, but her voice kept strong. "A common mistake. The Tomb Guard comes from the 3rd Infantry Regiment, the Old Guard. These soldiers rotate between combat deployments and this duty. Marcus here, he's been in war zones. You can't imagine that uniform doesn't make him less of a fighter. It makes him more." The crowd murmured, some nodding, others whispering to their kids about what they'd learned. A girl with a Georgetown hoodie raised her hand. "Why don't they tell us this in the brochures?" Colonel Ford said with a smile and a tinge of pride in her voice. "We don't advertise it. The tomb speaks for itself, but every sentinel is a volunteer who has been thoroughly checked out for excellent service. Less than 20% pass the training. They memorize pages of history, keep their uniforms perfect, And yes, they trained to protect this place, not just with ceremony, but with force if necessary. Alex, who was now more stable, looked at Marcus, who was still at his station with his eyes forward. "That strike," he remarked, his voice full of emotion. "I've never felt anything like it. 15 years in the ring, full contact matches, nothing comes close." Marcus didn't say anything, but Colonel Ford did. "It's not about points, Mr. Chen. It's about precision. One move, one result. That's military training." Alex stopped and turned to Marcus as the security crew got ready to take him away. "I'm sorry I misjudged you. Badly." Marcus's eyes flicked to his for a second, and he nodded in a way that was almost imperceptible. "Most people do," he remarked in a voice that was soft but distinct. Colonel Ford spoke to the gathering one more time as the officers carried Alex to a car. "They see the uniform, not the soldier. The tomb of the unknown soldier isn't simply a memorial. It's a commitment to remember those who gave everything, no questions asked. The sentinels reflect that promise. Their discipline and stillness aren't for show, they're for them." She pointed to the white headstone that stretched into the distance. "And for us." Alex, who was now in the rear of the security car, stared out at the tomb with a look of humility and understanding. He came here to make a point and show the world that no one could beat him at Kung Fu. He had learned something deeper about respect, sacrifice, and the quiet strength of those who serve. As the car drove away, he said to himself, "I've been fighting for medals. They're fighting for something bigger." The gathering broke up, and the tourists moved on to other sites, but their steps and voices were quieter now. A father told his son, "Those guards are real heroes, not just for the cameras." The boy nodded and held on to a small American flag. Colonel Ford watched them leave, and then turned to Marcus and nodded in respect. He gave it back and continued his march. 21 steps, a pause, a turn, and a pause. A month later, Alex was back in San Francisco, standing in front of a full dojo class. He didn't point to his championship belt, which was hanging on the wall. Instead, he held out a picture of the tomb that was shown on a screen behind him. "I learned something at Arlington," he replied, his voice steady but softer. "Strength isn't just in your fists or your forms. It's in discipline, in honoring those who came before us. Starting today, we're establishing a new program. Free sessions for veterans. Real fighters don't battle for fame, they fight for each other." The students clapped, and Alex felt something change inside him. He didn't care about the cameras or the likes this time. He had discovered a new type of strength that connected his Chinese roots to his American heart. And in the stillness of Arlington, a sentinel marched on, protecting the unknown and holding a truth that Alex would never forget. Power doesn't come from winning, it comes from duty. So, what would you have done if you were Alex? Would you have seen the soldier behind the ceremony, or would you have made the same mistake? This is a story of dignity, humility, and the brave people who protect the heart of our country. If it touched you, tell someone who needs to hear it. Go to Arlington, pay your respects, and always remember what those white stones mean. We'll be back with another story about how strong and graceful Americans are. Until then, keep learning, improving, and respecting those who serve. If you liked the story, you could send a super chat to help deliver more stories like this one. Click on the video on the screen now to hear another story that is just as strong and interesting, with bravery, sacrifice, and a choice that will make you question all you thought you knew about duty and justice. Click the video.